In this chapter, we're going to talk about preprocess functions in template.php. We are going to print out all available variables and then change one of them. So here's the scenario. My designer has told me that the site slogan that is currently printed under the site name needs to be displaying a random value instead. And he's given me a list of the possible slogans, and every time a user hits the page, they're supposed to get a random one from that list. So I'm going to talk about my thought processes and actually demonstrate the code to go through to accomplish this goal. So let's first introduce the template.php file. If you go into your theme, which we've got right here, our 960 robots theme, we actually are going to need to add a new file. So I'm going to go into my text editor and we'll create a new file right here. And we need to save this file as template.php right there in the root of your theme. Okay, now we'll go take a look again, and you'll see now we have our template.php file right there in the root of our 960 robots theme. First thing we're going to do is our opening PHP tag. If your text editor does have an autocomplete going on there, like you just saw mine do, make sure to remove the closing PHP tag. I know that sounds really, really strange, but it is Drupal coding standards for a PHP file to only have the opening PHP tag. This is not true for template files. This is for the long, full PHP file. So just your opening one. And the next thing we can do is put in our comment block. This is just information that tells other people looking at the code what kind of file it is, and that what its function and purpose is. So we're just saying this file is part of the 960s robots theme, and we're going to have preprocess functions in here and alter variables. So the first thing we're going to do is put in our preprocess function. This is theme preprocess, where we pass in two variables, the first one being $variables and the second one being $hook. This is a function that gets called every single time a section of the page is rendered. Just to illustrate that, I'm actually going to go ahead and utilize our devel function kpr. We're going to print out hooks just to show you, because this is also firstly a brand new file, and secondly a brand new function. We need to clear our cache. So let's go back to our site. If you recall, we did add to our shortcut bar the performance button. So if you want to go ahead and clear caches, it's important to do this every time you add a new file or a new function to your template.php. So once that's done and we close the overlay, the page behind it will end up reloading itself, and we'll be able to see what we've just printed, because we did a KPR on hooks. So the page behind it is now reloading, and you can see all of the hooks. Interestingly, you'll also notice that the hooks are kind of called from the inside out. For example, in this left column, we are seeing 5 instances of the word node, then block, then region. That's because we have a display here with 5 nodes, and then so each individual node's getting rendered, then the block's getting rendered, then the region's getting rendered. In our center column, we have 3 blocks. Each of those is getting rendered prior to the region. And you can continue to see that the same pattern is followed in our footer area as well, where a block is created and then the region. And in our right column, again, we've got the block hook is being called, another block, and then the region hook. If we scroll back to the top, you'll notice that all of the views fields are being rendered prior to our page and our HTML. But the one important thing to notice is that the page hook is only being called once. I actually have a snippet of code that we can paste into our function to display actually the count on when things are being called. So that way we'll have a much better idea of the order of operations. As we're looking down, we can see all of our views fields. Those are the hooks being called. We get all the way through here, and then our page is being put together. Oddly enough, we then jump to HTML, toolbar, and region. So let's go find where's 27. Okay, 27 looks like it's hidden under our image here, and then we're doing our left column and our right column. So what these numbers are telling me is that the page does get put together from kind of left to right and top down, but from the inside out. So when we hit this left area, we're doing the nodes, all of those nodes individually, then the block, then the region. And as we go all the way down, the middle column, the right column, same is true as we do the left footer and the right footer. Then we come all the way back up here, finally add the HTML hook. That's the doc type at the very, very top of the file. And then we've got this this mystery here, this toolbar and region. That's your administrative toolbar. That gets layered on at the very, very last minute, kind of above everything else. That's not a usual part of the page. It's just for administrative purposes. So here we go. We do only have one page hook. Now, as we just showed, 50 times on this one page, this function's being called. So there is a way to say, okay, we only want this function to be called once. There's no reason for it to happen 50 times. If we're just trying to take care of something that is happening at the page level. So if we go back to our code, we could go ahead and we could say if our hook equals page, then we could go ahead and say, let's print out our comments saying that this is being called. So we'll paste that in there. We'll take a look and refresh. Scroll up to the top and you see page is only getting called once. So one way we can handle the fact that our preprocess function gets called about 50 times on page load is that we can put in an if statement to control when your specific code gets executed. What we have right now is saying only when the page hook is being called, which is once per page load, do we want our code to run. Now we can be a little bit more specific actually. There is, in addition to our theme preprocess functions, there are theme preprocess hook functions where we go ahead and are explicit. So I'm going to go into my existing function, add in an underscore page. That's actually the hook when we want our function to be called. We no longer need to pass that variable. And we can now say, every time this function gets called, I want to print a phrase just to prove that it's being called. So we'll go back to our site. Now, because this is a new function, we changed the name of it. I do want to go ahead and clear the theming cache. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now when we come back to our page, we should see the word woohoo being printed. There you go. So now we know our function's getting called. The next thing I want to do is I want to see what variables do I have available to me. Remember, at the very beginning we said we were tasked with changing that site slogan. So let's see. Do we have our site slogan available to us? Let's take a look. So here we go. We are looking for our site slogan. And scroll down. There we go. Towards the end of all of our variables is our site slogan. It is a string. And the contents, the value of that is this theme is awesome. right here, our site slogan is saying, "This theme is awesome." So let's actually see if we can change what that is. My site's slogan has a new value. And let's see if that works. We'll look at the top. My new slogan is being printed there. Excellent, excellent. If we look at our KPR as well, you'll see my new slogan. Okay, so we have successfully changed a variable. Now, to take this task a little further, is we're supposed to actually have a random list of slogans. I am actually going to show you how to create a random list. We're just going to comment that out for now. We're not going to need that just yet. First thing we're going to do is say, I have a bunch of slogans. So $slogans equals array. So for my first slogan, I've got my life is good. You'll notice something unique. I don't just have a string in between single quotes. It's actually wrapped in a T function. Yes, this is a one-letter function called T. T means translatable. In Drupal, anytime you have a string, you should wrap it in this T function. That way, when the website goes from, saying, printing information in its default language to a secondary language like French or Spanish, that string can actually now have an equal version of it in another language. So life is good might be in English as the default language on the site, but once the site now has a French version, it would be able to print that as well. So it is very, very important anytime you are writing in strings that you do utilize that T function. So I have the list from my designer of all of the slogans, and I'm going to replace these two lines with actually the entire set of possible slogans. So you'll notice the syntax did change a little bit here. Both are equivalent syntaxes. I was using the brackets before, but now since I have a whole list, I'm actually going to just use the array and the comma separated between each line. Both are fine though. The next step we need to do is from this array of slogans is find a single random slogan. In order to do that, we're just going to take that array of slogans and take a random one using a PHP function and assigning it to the word slogan. So now we have that. We need to take our one unique slogan and put that into the variable for our site slogan. If you look below in my commented out area, I actually already started that process of reassigning what was in variables site slogan to my new slogan. So we can actually go ahead and just adjust what I already have. So I'm going to uncomment that out. I'm going to take my newly created slogan variable and utilize that. When we go back to our site, we should see a unique slogan, and in our KPR, it should be printed there as well. I'm going to refresh. And the first thing you'll notice is our site slogan is from that list. If I scroll up where I'm printing out all of our variables, you'll also see it's displayed there as well. We can refresh one more time. And sure enough, we have a new site slogan. So the last thing to do is to remove your debug code. Go ahead and hit save. We just worked with template preprocess page. And as you recall from previous videos, there is a whole list of tpl.php files to work with. And there are now associated preprocess functions for each of those. So we just did the associated function for page TPL. There is also an associated function for node TPL. That would be your theme preprocess node. This is an entire list. There are many more, as each contributed module can go ahead and create new template files, and therefore you have the ability to create a preprocess function for each of those, where you're allowed to change existing variables or add new variables.